Okay, right. So let's say that Cardiff RFC is not an instance of a rugby team. Then Cardiff RFC is what? Now Cardiff RFC I'll be considering, instead of considering it as an instance, I'll be considering Cardiff RFC as a class. That means Cardiff RFC now belongs to a more specified, sorry, to a more generalized class of a rugby team. Hold on. To understand it in a much better way, let's say, Abhi, don't look towards the slide for the time being. Just listen to me. If I say that Cardiff RFC is a case of generalization, then I'll say its specialized version is what? The teams or rugby teams or a sporting team, in fact. Yes or no? Right? Can you hear me? अरे बीच बीच में बोला करो यार, whether you are listening to me or not. Okay, चलो ठीक है. So it is there. So other than instance, if I consider it as a class, then what gonna happen? Now its instances would be players. Obviously, if I consider Cardiff RFC being a class instead of being an instance of rugby team, then all its players would be members of teams that are not even Cardiff RFC but included within the higher higher generalized class of rugby team. That means it will violate the rule that some of the members of the rugby team may play for some other team which we don't want. What I wanted to, or what this slide wants you to understand, is the basic distinction or the difference between sets and instances. I was talking about Cardiff RFC being an instance of this. If Cardiff RFC wouldn't have been the instance of rugby team, instead it would have been the class, then this would have been the problem that would have cropped up, right? So to avoid these kind of issues, what are we going to do? Now there are still certain problems that exists. The problem that exists is the inheritance issue that is still there. If I don't solve these clear-cut distinction issues, then there is another problem that still exists, that is that of inheritance. To somehow take care of this inheritance, there is a way out. What is that way out? Now I can create a class within a class. I can create a class within a class. Okay. Class within a class. This class within a class structure, we call it as a meta class. This class within a class structure, we call it as a meta class. There is a small example for this. It is a little complicated, but don't worry. This thing can be solved very easily. I'll be showing you that. Let's say that we have created a class within a class having a class membership of a class as well a class inclusion of a class also, right? I do have a class instance, that means a class membership of a class as well as a class inclusion of a class also, right? So under these categories, I can further subdivide, or I can further attach the few more frames like team, rugby team, and the name of the rugby team, that means the Cardiff RFC, as well as certain players within them, right? So you don't have to go into much details of these, even though I do have a dedicated lecture on this. So you can just go through it. But for the time being, I need to describe one more thing. So this slide is now over. I need to move on to my second slide. That means here. They talk about, this is frames part 2, they talk about the slots as an object. They talk about the slots as an object. I'll not be describing it in much details, but the brief idea about it is, if I have created a frame, if I have created a frame, then those frames will be carrying certain number of slots, right? Those slots will be carrying certain values. Those values are attributes. But the question arises that why are we creating the frames from semantic nets? As we have discussed in our previous lecture, that a frame is an extension of the semantic net. If this is the case, then what are the basic advantages that we are going to get in case of frames that we are not getting in case of semantic nets? Those advantages are, or those issues to be discussed are, like attributes such as weight, age are to be attached. This is just a mere example of it, right? Like there is a corresponding there's a kind of an a relationship between the weight and the age of an individual. They follow certain trend, right? How am I going to show these kind of trends, or how am I going to show these kind of interdependencies in case of frames, sorry, rather to be more specific, in case of slots that are contained within the particular frame? There are certain constraints also which are to be defined. These constraints are like the age and should be less than 100, even though it has been written as 100, but we all know that you cannot have an age exceeding 125 or 130, even though very optimistically I'm talking about it, right? And there are certain default values also, like the structure of the dates or something else, right? And also we do have the rules for inheritance, rules for computing values, and there are some other things also. We do have a complex example of holding a slot within a slot. You may skip this part, or if you wish, you may even go through it. I have given a proper explanation for this in my YouTube video. In much more details, you can go through it, right? Now, after going through all these things, I'll discuss one thing out here. One of the questions that we are supposed to discuss out, right? What is that question? Even before we create out the frames, it is advisable to create a semantic network first of all, right? So we do have two questions out here. Let us read out the first question. Richard Nixon is a Quaker as well as a Republican. We all know Richard Nixon was a American president, right? So Richard Nixon is a Quaker as well as, and he is a Republican. There is another second assertion that has been given. That means a knowledge representation that has been provided to you is that Quakers and Republicans are person. Don't get confused. I'm not talking about, this question is not talking about the fact that Quakers and Republicans are getting generalized as a person. No, it is not the case, right? The next assertion is every Quaker, every Quaker follows, every Quaker, every Quaker follows the doctrine of pacifism. That means every Quaker, another Quaker follows, they all have the same doctrine of pacifism, right? That means they follow certain kind of faith, maybe. So we do have three assertions that has been given. Richard Nixon is a Quaker and a Republican. Quakers and Republicans are person, and every Quaker follows the doctrine of pacifism, right? We do have a second question also. Let us see the first one. That means this one. How you're going to represent this as a, semantic net, right? किसको Am I audible now? Am I audible now? Okay, okay, fine, 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 fine. There's certain issues that comes up, right? I hope you'll understand that. Wait, this every time I have to admit somebody, I don't know how am I going to call up the rest of the guys as soon as possible, because every time I have to come up and allow these things. This is not fair. I mean, I have to check out a way by which I can allow everybody at one shot. Okay, forget about it. Let's see the solution for this problem. So here we do have the problem solution, right? So Richard Nixon is a Quaker. Richard Nixon is a Quaker, and he's a Republican also, right? Richard Nixon is a Quaker as well as he's a Republican also. That means that means he's a member of that means he's a member of the Quaker. That means he's a Quaker and he is a Republican too. But considering Richard Nixon's belongingness, that means putting up a subset of, that means subset of means what? That this is a class of inclusion in case of semantic nets. So Richard Nixon is a person. In this case, Richard Nixon is a person. So the description of Richard Nixon's characteristics, that means his class inclusion as well as class membership, has been clearly stated out here, right, within this periphery. But since he is a Quaker and every Quaker follows, they do have a doctrine of pacifism. That means all these Quakers, they are pacifists also, right? So this thing has been shown here. So this is how you're gonna draw the semantic nets for various problems that may be given to you, right? So let us see the second question that we do have. The second question that we do have is, Mary gave the green flowered vase to her cousin, right? Mary gave the green flowered vase to her cousin. Now, what you got to do is you got to first check out certain facts. Mary gave, that means Mary is an object class, and she gave something, that means she hosted an event. Event is a what? She hosted an event of giving something to her cousin, right? So let us check out how this thing looks. So here it is, we do have Mary having an event 1 with a person 1, having an event 1 with a person 1. In this case, the person is a cousin, right? But the event 1 that has occurred comprises of something that has been done, that means giving something, and it includes an object also. Object 1. What is this object? Now the object is a flower vase that is of green color. That means this object holds an instance. This object holds an instance of flower vase, and it has been textured. That means the attributes are its color and texture. Color is green, and we do have the texture, that is it has been flowered, right? So this is how we'll be solving. There is a much better this example, we'll be talking about it also soon. Tick. So we are done with it. We are done with this. It's gone. We are done with this. So now coming down here to our main slide. This we have already talked about. Now we do have the inferential knowledge representation or inferential knowledge. What is this inferential knowledge? Inferential knowledge is all about what we infer from a given set of information that has been provided to me beforehand. That means there is a certain set of information that has been already given to me, and I am deducing some more information from the already given information that is there with me. Right? So these kind of things are possible only when we do have a predicate logic representation of the facts. When we do have a predicate logic representation of the facts. Again, I'm not going to talk about all these things, implications and this and that, which we have already dealt during our lecture classes back at JUET, right? Instead of that, am I audible? बीच बीच में एक बार बोल दो भाई. Am I audible?
Yes, yes,
Okay.
yes, sir. But sir, like the slides are
क्या हो गया?
are
What happened?
hanging.
What happened?
Sir, I think the slides are hanged. Sir, you are moving the slides for like the slides are hanged from my side, I think, or like they're at the same place. I am confused with this thing.
किसको किसको भाई स्लाइड्स हैंग दिखाई दे रहा है, नहीं चल रहा है? Anybody else? You can see the movement of the slide, na?
I think I have to join. Okay, sir. Thank you.
अरे रुक जाओ. किसी का anybody has it been frozen? Slides hang हो गया है. Okay, रुको. Is it visible now? Is it visible now? Okay.
Yes, sir. So now it is showing like and be and cousin and give event all those things.
Right.
The flow chart.
हाँ. So you can see the slides now, right? You can see the slides now.
Now it is on the predicate logic thing.
Okay, you can see this slide now. You guys can see this slide now. Okay, fine.
Yes, sir.
So you guys can see this slide now.
Yes, sir.
Okay, fine. So in case of inferential knowledge, what we can do is, it is better to solve this example. At least, rather than solving, we can just revise something of the predicate part. I'll not go into the details of it. So you do have something in front of you. There is an example for this. I mean, for the inferential knowledge part. These things are not included in the slides, right? These things are not included in your main slides. These things are not included in your So what we are having here is an example. That means the law says that it is a crime for an American to sell weapons to hostile nations, right? To sell weapons to the hostile nations. Again, not visible. Slide not visible.
It is written in the example. The law says it is time for an American to sell weapons.
It is there. Right. So, to the hostile nations, the country Nano, an enemy of America, has some missiles. Yeah, Bhavna, tell me. Yeah, please tell me. You raised your hand. Tell me, Bhavna. So the country Nono, an enemy of America, has some missiles, and all its missiles were sold to it by Colonel Waste or Colonel Waste, who is an American. So prove that Colonel West is a criminal, right? Prove that he is a criminal. So just to represent this fact, there are certain things like the law says that it is a crime for American to sell weapons to the hostile nations. How am I going to represent it? Now, for all X, where X are Americans and where Y is a weapon and Z is hostile, and X sells Y to Z. That means X an American sells a weapon Y to a hostile nation Z. It implies that X is a criminal, right? It implies that X is a criminal. So this is an assertion that can be proven, and there are some more facts that are given, like Nono is a country. Nono is an enemy of America, an enemy of America. So Nono is an enemy of America, has some missiles. That means there exist certain missiles X, and where Nono owns those missiles X, and all its missiles were sold to it by Colonel West. That means for all X, where X is a missile, and Nono owns those missiles, and Colonel West has sold those X, that means those missiles, to Nono, who is an American. That means West is an American. Then X is obviously a criminal, right? Then X is obviously a criminal. Tick. So this is how you'll be. I was just giving you the flavor of that. Now no more things are needed. You do have this. In case of existence, these generalization and specialization, I'll not be wasting much of your time here. In case of techniques, the reasoning, techniques for reasoning, there are certain things like the height must be in unit of length, whereas age is a lapse of the time. That means it must be in some kind of like dates or months, years, something like that. Single valued attribute. अरे यार, अरे बाप, sorry, वहां पे नहीं जाना था, हमें यहाँ पे रहना था. We're supposed to be here. Inferential knowledge. Sorry. We have to be here. Inferential knowledge. We have crossed some of the slides. Okay. We have talked about the inferential knowledge here. Then declarative and procedural. I'm not going to repeat it again and again. These are very simple stuffs, right? Let's move on. Yes, this is very important. Issues in knowledge representation, right? What are the issues that are involved in knowledge representation? The importance of the attributes.
अब फ्रीज हो गई हैं फिर से स्लाइड्स.
अच्छा, फिर से फ्रीज हो गया है.
हाँ सर.
अभी कौन सा स्लाइड दिख रहा है तुम लोग? इश्यूज दिख रहा है? इश्यूज इन नॉलेज रिप्रेजेंटेशन.
नहीं, द लॉ सेज दैट इट इज अ क्राइम फॉर एन अमेरिकन.
अरे बाबा, अरे अब देखो तो दिख रहा है. Can you see the PDF file, issues in knowledge representation? Can you see this? Okay, fine. Okay. So there are certain issues in knowledge representation that are there. Those issues are.
Now it is showing issues in knowledge representation.
Yes, this is what I'm saying now. This is what I'm saying now. Right. So in case of issues in knowledge representation, I have got certain things to remember. That means how important are the attributes? That means, are there any attributes? Are there any attribute of objects so basic that they occur in almost every problem domain? I have to check this. That means the importance of the attributes. I have to check about the relationships amongst the attributes. I have to check about the granularity. That means how to choose the granularity of the attributes that we are using in the frame or in the semantic net of knowledge representation, right? And the set of objects, this is not so important, and finding the right structure, this is important, this is important. Finding the right structure is not so important. Again, I'm not audible. Am I audible now? Okay, okay. So out of these issues, the most important ones are the importance of the attributes, the relationships amongst the attributes, and choosing the granularity, right? And the set of objects. This is not so important, but still you got to study this. Let's come down. While talking about the importance of the attributes or the important attributes, we do have only two subclasses, that means the instance and an is. Don't get confused with the attribute classes of the databases where we do have multiple types of attributes, right? Here we do have only two classes, that is the instance as well as in case of is-a, right? We do have instance and we do have an is-a. These are the two classes of the importance of attributes that you're supposed to hold on with. Now we do have the relationships amongst the attributes. Inverses we have talked about a few minutes back. Here I'll be giving you one more example of inverses. Inverses is nothing but a consistency check. Inverses, that means checking about an inverse in case of attribute classes for a slots in case of frame representation. It is basically about the consistency check. It is basically about the consistency check, right? So there is a small example for this out here. Like for example, if we have a logic representation of PV Rees, right? So Rees is a player, and Brooklyn Dodgers is a team name. So Rees belongs to कौन सा स्लाइड देख रहे हो डियर कौन सा वाला स्लाइड देख रहे हो अभी which slide you are seeing now
Sir, it is showing issues in knowledge representation. Sir, it is showing issues in knowledge representation. The fundamental goal of knowledge representation.
अच्छा अभी तक जो मैं बोल रहा था वो सुनाई पड़ा था ना
सर बीच में आवाज आनी रुक गई थी फिर एकदम से मतलब फिर एकदम से
Is it visible and is it audible?
Now it is showing the relationship among attributes.
Issues in knowledge representation. This is there, right?
Sir, actually the slides have been removed now. It was showing that the slides got away.
Now can you see my desktop? Is it visible?
Yes sir, now it is visible.
कुछ और नहीं दिख रहा है ना सिर्फ डेस्कटॉप दिख रहा है राइट
It is showing relationship of
अरे यार
yes the important attributes and relationships. attribute.
चलो कोई नहीं, आज यहीं पे छोड़ते हैं इसको, क्योंकि ये आज इंटरनेट कनेक्शन शायद थोड़ा सा पुअर है, बिकॉज यहाँ पे बहुत बारिश हुआ है। भाई सुयश, आर यू देयर? सुयश, आर यू देयर?
यस सर।
सुयश जरा स्क्रीनशॉट ले लो यार अटेंडेंस का। सुयश जरा स्क्रीनशॉट ले लो यार
यस सर, यस सर।
अटेंडेंस का। थोड़ा सा आज इंटरनेट कनेक्शन पुअर है, मे बी दैट्स द रीजन व्हाई। थोड़ा सा इंटरनेट कनेक्शन पुअर है, मे बी दैट्स द रीजन व्हाई। Okay, till now, if you have any kind of questions or any kind of queries,
Okay,
just ask.
Any kind of questions or any kind of queries, ask.
Any general specific questions regarding frames, slots, not
Any
the
general
presentation, the parts
specific
that
questions
I was talking about for the last
thoughts, parts that
lectures, कुछ
that's
पूछो।
for the last lectures.
You may type it on the chat also.
You may type it on the chat also.
एग्जाम कहाँ का एग्जाम बताओ, जेवीटी के एग्जाम के बारे में पूछ।
एग्जाम कहाँ का एग्जाम बताओ, जीवीटी के एग्जाम के बारे में पूछ।
Ayush Dhakar, are you asking about the exams that are to be taken at JVT?
Asking about the exams that are to be taken at JVT.
Okay, screenshot of there. Okay, fine. Let's call it a day. Thank you so
Okay,
much.
screenshot of there. Okay, fine. Let's call it a day. Thank you so much.
See you again tomorrow at the same time. Huh?